But just keep in mind that if I walk away from R and the session times out, or I close this Colab notebook, and then I open this up in a couple of hours and I want to pick up and start working on this again, um, I need to load this package again. So every time I reconnect and start a new R session and want to use data or functions from the dplyr package, I'm going to have to reload the dplyr package with the library command. So just keep that in mind. So if you see an error message that says like, hey, I'm not familiar with this data set, which is in the dplyr package, just note that, hey, the reason why you might be getting that error message is you might need to run the library command to load that package before you can access the data or functions inside of that package. Okay, so when you're working with functions or data sets in R, there's help documentation for them, and that has been written by the developers of the package. And so I'll just say, based on who developed that package, the help documentation might be really robust and helpful, or it might be totally absent, or it might be really sparse and unhelpful. It really is variable and dependent on the package. Of course, you can always go, here are some other links of other places where you can go to get help on various commands when you're working in R. But a really nice way of getting help in R is to put a question mark before the command or the data set that you're working with, and that will open up kind of the official help manual for that command or for that data set. So for example, there is a data set in the dplyr package called storms. Storms. Okay. So let's say I have questions about the storms data set. What is inside the storms data set? Where did that data come from? Before I do any analysis on storms, I want to make sure that it comes from a credible source. And I want to make sure that the data inside of it is useful for whatever questions or whatever analysis I want to do. I can put question mark storms. I run this code cell, and you can see on the side panel on the right, the help documentation opens up. And I can resize this as I like to make it more readable. And you can see over here, I've got a little description, and it's asking, what is the source of this data? Right away, I've got the source. This data is from NOAA, and I've got a link to where that came. So this is coming from the hurricane database from NOAA. What variables are included in this data set? Well, they're all listed out over here. Name is one variable, year, month, day are three other variables. And so I will, for those in my class, I will post solutions to this in Canvas. If you want to check yours, I'll let you kind of work out your solutions and check it with the solutions that I post in Canvas. Hour is another variable, and so you can see all of the various variables listed out in this help documentation, as well as a description of what those variables are telling us about each observation in the data set. It tells us how many observations are in the data set, how many variables in total are in the data set. So I'm getting a lot of information, how different categories of hurricanes are defined. And over here in particular, I'm curious, like, over what period of time and how often are observations being recorded. And this tells us that this data was recorded from 1975 all the way up to 2022. And these were storms that were measured every 6 hours. Okay, that just answered a whole bunch of questions about this storms data set. So this is really nice way of accessing help documentation. Another way is to type help and storms. Like I said, there are oftentimes multiple ways of doing the same operation. This does exactly the same thing. It opens up the help documentation. So there's no reason why you would need to do both of these things. They both do the same exact thing. And not only can you get like help on documentation for like a data set, let's say I wanted to create a histogram to display the distribution of wind speeds or something like that for the storms in the data set. And I'm like, okay, let me think about, well, how could I create a histogram for the wind speeds? I want to know how this histogram function works. I can do question mark hist. And over here, this histogram function, first of all, I can see what package it comes from. It comes from like a base package called graphics. And this is telling me all sorts of information about the histogram function. What does it do? What are the various options for the histogram function? What are the various defaults for those options? Spells it out in lots of detail, even more detail, gives you some references to look up of other things, gives you examples of how to create various histograms and so on. So really robust help documentation over here. And so from this, you can kind of play around and think about, well, what would I do if I wanted to add a title to a histogram? Well, let's kind of go over here and say, if I wanted to add a title to this histogram, this seems like this might work over here. Main title. So I would add an option like main over here to add a title. So something like this would give me a title, would add a main title to the histogram. And, we're going to talk, this whole class is about visualization of data. So don't worry too much about like creating histograms. We'll talk about this, I think, in the next week. But for now, the main point here is like how you can open up help documentation as opposed to like what is a histogram or how to create a histogram. But if I were to like curious, like, hey, I want the bars of my histogram to be pink instead of gray, how could I do that? Kind of look through the various options over here, maybe thinking color might be a reasonable option, but actually the option that you would want to use is COL. And so over here, you can kind of come up here. I would use the histogram function and I would do something like color equals, the default is light gray. If I wanted to use pink, I would say color equals, and then in double quotes, whatever the name of my color is. So if I wanted my color to be pink, I would say something like color equals, and then in double quotes, pink. So I would do something like histogram and I would have a bunch of stuff, but my color option would be pink. And if I wanted to do a main title, my main title would be the option would be main is equal to, and then whatever I wanted the title of my histogram to be. Okay, so again, the point here is not to worry about how to create histograms, but more so how to access help documentation for the histogram so that you could do some research and figure out how to tweak various options for that function. Okay, well, that is a wrap for this worksheet. For those in my class, if you've got any questions about this, feel free to reach out to me. For those in my class, this should get you going. Be sure you take a look at the quiz posted in Canvas and complete that by the due date and get ready for the next week of class. Hope week one of your classes went well, everybody, and hope to see some of you in person. Come by and say hello. Take care, everybody.